my yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach. Welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video is our Granny Square of the month. And in case you don't know, what we've been doing for this year is we've been designing a 6-inch Granny Square each month and using our birthstone of each month as an inspiration. So we have January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and today is October. And we're using what's called the October Rose Quartz as our inspiration. And so I decided to make a 3D rose in the center of our square. And it looks difficult, but it's not. Now, I know there are other birthstones that represent October. I think opal is one of them, and then another one. But what I'm doing is going by the jeweler's stones. But remember, if you don't want to do them in the colors that I have made them, you don't have to. And the truth is, if you want to make all the squares, you can make them all in one color. Or just use up your yarn stash and come up with some really fun, different colors of squares. And so what we're going to be doing is making 2 squares for each month, and then we're going to put them together in a small blanket or throw. If you want to make your blanket bigger, make more squares. Also, you don't have to make a blanket. You can make a bag, a scarf, a hat, or just have some fun with the squares, making whatever you would like to make with them. Maybe you just like one in particular. Maybe you really like this one or this one, and you want to make a whole bunch in those colors. Have so much fun and do whatever you want with our 6-inch squares. Now, you can find the complete pattern of this month's, the October Rose Quartz. It is a beautiful pink, sort of rosy colored stone, and I just fell in love with it when I saw it online, and so I thought it would be perfect for our October square. Now, you do notice that I have this on a blocking board. I like to block my squares just to make it easier when it comes to putting them all together so they meet up well, but you don't have to block yours if you don't want to. And again, at the end of the video, I'll explain how I block my squares if you want to learn that. It's just really simple, but again, you don't have to. Now you can find the complete pattern for this month's square. That blog link will be down in the notes underneath this video as always. And I also have a list of all the other squares that we've done and links to those videos in that description box underneath this video. Now, just a reminder, when you're making your squares, make sure that you make them all in the same fiber. If you're using a wool blend, an acrylic, a cotton, you want to make sure that all your squares are done in the same fiber, because if you mix your fibers, wool and cotton, acrylics and alpacas and all different fibers, they don't all wash up the same. And so I'm keeping with acrylic yarns for all of mine, just so that I can wash it if need be. All right, and so what I did with this one is I made the rose in sort of a mauve color. And I really like it. It looks pretty. You can use whatever color you want for your rose, of course. And then I did the background in this kind of minty green. It's a darker, more of a sage green. And then cream for the edge. The one that I'm going to show you in our demo, I'm going to do it a little bit different as far as how I change the colors. That way you can see there are lots of different ways that you can change up your squares. You don't have to do the whole back in green. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make the rose, then I'm going to do the next row in green, then do some cream, and then I'm going to do the edge in the green again. Or maybe the rose color. I haven't decided yet. And that's what's fun about these squares. Because although I show you how to do it in one particular way, you can change up your colors and make some really pretty squares. All right. All the yarns that I'm using are medium weight number 4 acrylic yarns. I'm using an H-hook today, which is a 5mm crochet hook, and then you just need a needle and a pair of scissors. And again, you just need a small amount because we're just making, 2 squares, 6 inches, And again, use your imagination and come up with whatever colors you want for your squares. So as you can see, I decided to go with an even lighter color of pink. This is more of just a dusty pink color. I was starting the video, and as I was working with the darker rose color that I chose, I just felt like it was coming out too dark for the video. All right, and I want you to be able to see, because the beginning of this square is really important, okay? All right, so we're going to begin with our slip knot. We're going to chain 5 and join this chain 5 into a circle. Pull the loop in through the loop and make our stay knot. Now again, as I always say, if you prefer to use the magic ring, the magic circle, or another method to make your beginning circle, it's totally fine. All right, so we're going to go in, pull up a loop, make that chain 1, and now we're going to stitch 8 single crochets in the loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And you will notice that I stitched over that tail of yarn, and that's so we can close up that hole. But before we do that, we're going to join to our first single crochet with a slip stitch, and then we'll go ahead and chain 2. All right, we're going to turn this over. We're going to go ahead and pull on that. And I'm going to grab my needle and weave this in. And as I always say also, you can wait till the end to do your weave in if you want to. I just like to go ahead and have it done, have that little circle closed up and look nice and tidy. We are going to be changing colors a couple of times, so we will have a few ends to weave in on this square. All right, so for row 1, we have 8 single crochets. We joined to our first single crochet and chained 2. Now on row 2, we're going to form the first 4 petals. All right, so we've chained 2. We're going to stitch 2 double crochets in this first single crochet. 1, whoops, there we go, 2. We're going to chain 2, and now we're going to single crochet in the next single crochet. Chain 2. Now we're going to place 2 double crochets in the next single crochet. 1, 2, chain 2. So you can see we've made 2 petals. So we've chained 2. We're going to go to the next single crochet and stitch 2 double crochets. 1, 2, and chain 2. We're going to single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the next single crochet, 1, 2, and chain 2. And then we'll single crochet in this last single crochet. And so you can see we have formed our first 4 petals. So now we have 4 petals. We're going to join to that first single crochet where we started with a slip stitch and chain 4. 1, 2, whoops, 3, 4. We're going to put that chain behind that petal, and we're going to come over here to this single crochet and slip stitch in that single crochet. And now we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put that chain behind that petal, and slip stitch in that single crochet between. All right, let me show you what that looks like. Here's our petals, and if you turn it over, you can see we have these little chain 4s. We're going to do that 2 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip stitch in that single crochet, chain 4, and we'll come right to that first single crochet where we started there and slip stitch. All right, I'm going to do a little chain 1 just to keep it in place so I can show you. This is how it looks on the front. We have our 4 petals, then we turn it over and you can see we have those 4 chain 4s, and that's where we're going to put our next row of petals, is in these chain 4 loops. All right, let's do row 4. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of push that petal forward, and we're going to go in this chain 4 loop. So we're going to go in and chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to stitch 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, okay, now we're going to slip stitch. That's going to bring that petal down, and so now in that chain 4 loop we've stitched 2 petals. And see how that lays? All right, so now we're going to go to the next chain 4 loop. And it's easiest if you just kind of push that front petal down so you can stitch in that loop. All right, so we're going to go in with the slip stitch and chain 2, 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 2, single crochet, 2 double crochets. Oops, that's a double crochet. There we go. 2 double crochets, chain 2, and slip stitch. Let's try that again, and slip stitch. All right, so now we have our front petal and our 2 back petals on that side. All right, let's do this 2 more times. So we're going to push the next petal forward. We're going to go in that chain 4 space, slip stitch, chain 2, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 2, and slip stitch. All right, so we got 1 more to do. 1 more chain 4 loop, so slip stitch, chain 2. Looks like I need to get a little more yarn out here. All right, so we chain 2. We're going to place those 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, slip stitch, and now we're just going to come over here and slip stitch to that first slip stitch. All right, so now you can see we have 4 petals on our first set, and then 4 sets of 2 petals on this, and that's our quartz rose. All right, so this is what the front looks like, but I want to show you the back just so you get an idea of how that looks. See, we stitched in those chain 4 loops. All right, so we've joined to that single crochet. We're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're again going to go on the back, and we're going to join to that slip stitch between that first set of 2 loops. and it can be a little snug. We're just going to slip stitch. And it is a little snug, but what this does is it helps pull that petal up so you get that 3D look, okay? So now we're going to chain 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go past these 2 petals, which were in that first chain 4, and we're going to go to that slip stitch in between and stitch a slip stitch. All right, and again, that's going to push that forward. And you can see on the back, we're making that same thing, 4 chain 4 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we'll go and do that again. And it is snug. You can see I really pushed on that. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll join where we started with a slip stitch. I'm going to snug that down a little bit. I like to pull that loop so I don't accidentally pull it out when I'm showing you. All right, so here's the front. And we want those petals to be a little bit 3D anyway, so that it looks like a rose. All right, so let's look at the back. So we have those 4 chain 4 loops, and that's where we're going to start forming the square of our granny square, is in these 4 loops. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to cut our yarn, and we're going to bring in the green. All right, let's snug this down. And what we're going to do is we're again going to work in those 4 chain loops. And so we're going to push those petals forward. We're going to go in here and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. So we slip stitched, chain 3. Now we're going to stitch 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. Then we're going to chain 2 and stitch 3 more double crochets in this chain 4 loop. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so basically we formed our first corner. So now we're going to go to the next chain 4 loop. So we'll push those petals forward. We're going to stitch 3 double crochets. 1, 2, oops, got a little splitty there. Let's get that. There we go. 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. So now I formed my second corner. I've got 1, 2. And we'll do this in these last 2 chain 4 spaces. 1, 2, and 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So we have 3 corners now. Now we'll go to that last chain 4 space and stitch our corner. 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, now we're going to join to that chain 3 with a slip stitch, and we're going to slip stitch in those 2 double crochets. Then we'll slip stitch in the chain 2 space and chain 3. All right, so this is how it looks on the front. Then we can turn it over, and you can see we stitched those corners in those chain 4s or chain 4 spaces that we made. All right. And we're just going to do what we do on a basic granny square. So we've chained 3. We're going to stitch 2 double crochets because our chain 3 counts as our first. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets. All right, we're going to chain 2. We're going to go to this next space and stitch 3 double crochets. 1, 2. All right, this yarn's a little slippy. 3 double crochets, chain 2, and that brings us to the corner. So in the corner, we're going to stitch 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so we need to chain 2. We'll go in that space between the corners and stitch 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And chain 2. And so you can see we're just picking it up like you would on a regular granny square. And so you'll make your corner and your 3 in that space, and we'll repeat this on these last 2 sides. I have finished that all the way around. We have our corners, chain 2, and then 3 double crochets in that space in between. We're going to join to our chain 3 with the slip stitch. There we go. Then we're going to slip stitch in those 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and then slip stitch in the chain 3 space and cut our yarn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in this cream. It's kind of an off-white cream. All right, so now we're going to chain 3 and make our corner like we usually do. So 2 more double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. Chain 2. Then we'll have these 2 chain 2 spaces where we'll stitch our 3 double crochets, chain 2, just like you do on a regular granny square. Chain 2, and that brings you to the corner. And again, we do the corner exactly the same as we've been doing. 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. Chain 2, and then 3 double crochets, chain 2 in these 2 chain 2 spaces. And chain 2. And so we're just doing this row and then the next row exactly the way you would do a granny square. We'll have our corners and then chain 2, 3 double crochets in our chain 2 spaces. So the next row will have 3. All right. And so we're going to do this with the white for 2 rows. So I have completed row 8 and row 9, which is just 2 solid rows of granny square in the cream color. And I like using the cream in there, or maybe a white or a light color, because I think it makes the center pop out really nicely. All right, so here's our chain 2. we're going to join to our chain 3 and then slip stitch in those next 2 double crochets and then slip stitch in the corner. And now we're going to cut our yarn. I'm going to bring back in my rose color just because it's important to our square. This last row is just a row of single crochets. All right, so we're in this corner, so we're going to single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet in the corner. Now we're going to single crochet in those 3 double crochets. And now we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in the chain 2 space. Then we'll stitch 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets, and then 1 single crochet in the chain 2 space. And the reason we're only doing 1 is it's going to tighten up that square a little bit and make it look nice and neat. All right, so 1 single crochet in the 3 double crochets and 1 single crochet in the chain 2 space. And we'll repeat that across. So now this brings us to our corner, and again we're going to single crochet in those 3 double crochets. Then we'll single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet. And what we did on this side, we're going to do on the last 3 sides. So we're going to single crochet in each of the double crochets, and then single crochet in that chain 2 space. And then we'll just repeat this all the way across. 1 single crochet in each double crochet, and 1 single crochet in each of the chain 2 spaces. All right, and then that brings us to the corner again. So 1 single crochet in the 3 doubles, and then single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet. And see how that works? And I really like the rose on there because I think that the rose color here really makes the rose in the center pop. All right, so we'll just finish this around and join back to our first single crochet. So you can see by stitching around the edge with the single crochet and only placing 1 in those chain 2 spaces, it really tightens up the square nice and tidy. All right, so let's join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch and cut our yarn. And then we'll just grab that loop from behind from our next stitch. There we go. Pull that to the back and tie that off. And yes, we do have a few ends to weave in because we changed colors a few times. All right, so we'll take our needle and weave those in just a minute. But what I want to talk to you next about is what happens if my square is too big or too small. So we all have a different tension or gauge. All right, and most of these I've stitched with an H hook. There was one, I think maybe 2, I can't remember, that I used an I, which is a 5.5. So if you make your square and it's just, I would say, more than 1/4 of an inch too big, you can always go down a hook size. Or if it's coming out way too small, you can go up a hook size. If it's off by 1/4 of an inch, I wouldn't even worry about that. You know, and because remember, yarn is stretchy and we can block it. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about next, real quick. Isn't it super fun to see how I used some different colors in different places and we get 2 different looking squares? I really like this one better myself because I think the green here looks like the leaf around the rose. But this one's pretty too. All right, let's talk about blocking. Do I have to block? You don't have to. Do I need to? You don't need to. I like to block squares because I think it makes it easier when it comes time to put them together to make sure everything lines up nicely. All right, it's really super simple. What I do, this is just a blocking board. I've had these for years. I bought some at Michael's, some from Hobby Lobby, different places. Okay, I think I've even picked some up at Joann's. All right, so they have these squares. They're blocked off by inches. This is 6 inches. And so I want to make sure my square is about 6 inches. So what I'll do is I'll pin it on with just a few pins. And then I will take a bottle of water and just spritz it. I don't soak it down. I just spritz it. Now this one I want my rose to stand up. So when I spritzed it, I took it and kind of went like this with it. Because I want it to have sort of a 3D look to it. Okay, like this one's laying a lot flatter. If I want it to stand up, I can spritz it and push the petals up, and it will give it a little bit more of a 3D look. It's totally up to you how you want to do that, and if you don't want to block it, you don't have to, as long as your sides meet up nicely. And so this is our October Rose Quartz Square.